Gender pay equity. Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Well, our discussion today gets started by a Wall Street Journal article dated May 7th by Rachel Bachman. Here's the headline. Listen carefully. The U.S. women's soccer team's pay doesn't rise as it generates more money. Here's why. And in the article, Rachel Bachman goes on to explain why, but let me repeat part of the headline. The U.S. women's soccer team's pay doesn't rise as it generates more money. Well, see, for us economists, this makes us ask a pretty important question. Have you ever had a dog who looked up at you, and as a result of your command, the dog tweaked its head sideways and gave you that, "What do you mean?" Look, that's what happens to we economists when we read this headline. Hold it. If you create more value, you should be paid more. Why are they not paid more? I'll give you the answer in a few minutes. Let's look at this. Okay, first, men play better soccer than women. I'm sorry, you don't have to agree with that, but it is a fact. I sat next to one of my students in a class one day, and I knew he was on the soccer team. I said, "Hey, I've been wondering about this. Would the DBU soccer team beat the women's national team?" And he's a very nice young man, and he stumbled around and kind of said, "Well, I don't really want to say." Well, his buddy next to him was on the DBU soccer team, and he said, "I'll say." He said, "Look it up." He said the U.S. women's national team played a select under 14 boys Dallas team, and the boys spanked them. So I went back to my computer and looked up what the student meant by spanked. Well, they explain in the article that yes, the U.S. women's national team did play an under 14 boys Dallas select team, and the boys beat them 7-2. There is some explanation. It was a scrimmage. They were helping the boys, etc., etc. But still, the boys won 7-2. Look, we're getting into our creational understanding here. God created men and women different. That's why they have a league of their own. I mean, think about it. When people say that women should have a league of their own, without knowing so, they're falling into our understanding of the Christian worldview. If women weren't different, how could you justify a league of their own? Well, you justify it by saying God made men bigger, faster, stronger. He made women smaller, weaker, and slower. Now, I know what you're thinking. There are some women who are faster than some men, but I don't have time for my lecture today on ceteris paribus, which is a big Latin term meaning all else being equal. All else being equal, men are bigger, faster, and stronger. Women are smaller, weaker, and slower. God knew what he was doing. He had something in mind here. So think about it. Let's assume then that our DBU soccer team could beat the U.S. women's national team, and they probably could. I mean, you have no idea. These were 14-year-old boys who beat the U.S. women's national team. These were boys. On our team, they're 20-year-old men. I mean, they're really, really fast. They're really strong, and they kick the ball really, really hard. So just go with the assumption for a while, if you will, with me here. Okay. So if the DBU men's team is better than the women's national team, doesn't that mean every time you watch the women's national team, you are discriminating against the DBU men's team? Why? Because they're men. You are discriminating. You can live in any city in America. It's very likely that you have a college team just down the street from you who plays better soccer than the women. Are you discriminating against those men because they're men and going to watch the women because they're women? If I've got you upset, hang with me here just a minute. So discrimination against men if you watch the women instead of the men because the men play better. Okay, I worked in pro tennis for 6 years. During part of that time, there was a woman who was 15 years old. Her name was Tracy Austin. She drug her racket around, and she made the quarterfinals at the French Open in Wimbledon. She finally won the U.S. Open, actually, in 1979 and 1981 at the ages of 17 and 19. And she was a phenom. She was really, people loved her. I mean, she really played well, and it was a fascinating thing to watch. But here's what most people don't know. Her brother, Jeff Austin, was a friend of mine. See, I worked for the Association of Tennis Professionals. I was a scheduling manager for the men pros. The high-ranked players didn't need my help. They could get into any tournament they wanted. It was the lower-ranked players who I got to know well, like Jeff Austin. He was ranked about 200 in the world at the time. So it's these guys ranked like 120 to 300. These are the guys I knew because I worked with them on a daily basis, helping them get into the right tournament. And so Jeff Austin and I are standing there talking at a tournament one day, and he said, Dave, people actually ask me, can I beat Tracy? And those questions kind of hurt his feelings. I mean, you guys have no idea how big and fast and strong the 200-ranked tennis player in the world is, and Jeff Austin was. I mean, these are amazing athletes. John McEnroe recently said offhand, well, Serena Williams is maybe the best woman who ever played. She might be ranked 700 in the world on the ATP Tour. Well, he just made up the number 700, but McEnroe's right. I mean, I worked for the ATP, so I'd guess she'd be somewhere in the 200s to 250. Why? Because of the creational difference. Serena Williams was created a woman. Men are created bigger, faster, stronger. I'm going to get to an answer that I think is going to satisfy you here pretty soon. And so I'll reveal a little bit of it right now. What do economists like? We like the market. We like the market. Talking to a friend recently about the book Redeeming Capitalism, in which he claims in the book, the author, Kenneth Barnes, claims, if people work hard, they should have a subsistence level pay at least. Well, first, what's the question? Who's going to define work hard? And second, who's going to pay this? See, economists, what we like is the market. What we say is, let's let everybody vote. And that's what the market is. Everybody gets to vote. So everybody gets to vote. Would you rather watch the women play soccer or the men play soccer? That's the market. And we like the market because everybody gets a vote. And here's the interesting question. As if you watch this women's soccer story, what they want is equal pay. Equal? Why equal? Why don't they want more? Now think about this. In my class, there are students who want equal grades. Who is it? The best students or the worst students? Go ahead, say it out loud. It's the worst students who want equal pay. Why do the women want equal pay? Actually, if they're producing more value, shouldn't they want more pay? Yeah. So it's the worst who want the equality. And listen, the market should answer this question. In some sports, women are more fun to watch. It's that way in volleyball. Men's volleyball is a terrible game to watch. Men are so big and so fast and so strong and jump so high and hit the ball so hard that no human can ever return it. And it's not a fun game to watch. Women's volleyball, that's really fun to watch because they have a lot of gets and the game goes on and the volley goes on and on. It's up and down. It's back and forth. It's really, really exciting. Women's volleyball is better than men's volleyball. And if the market decides that women's soccer is more attractive, it's not better, by the way. They play at a lower level. That is just a fact. But if it's more attractive, the market should determine how much the women get paid. The market should determine that. There's another point in this article about the mission. See, here's back to Rachel Bachman in the Wall Street Journal on May 7. The women's employer, their mission statement, and their contract with its women's and men's national teams differ sharply from those of professional leagues, end quote. Let me go further into the article. Here's the women of the U.S. Soccer, or the mission of the U.S. Soccer Association, who employs these men and women. Quote, U.S. Soccer's mission statement, printed on its tax filings, is, quote, to promote and govern soccer in the United States in order to make it the preeminent sport recognized for excellence in participation, spectator appeal, international competitions, and gender equality, end quote. Okay, so their mission is not to make money. Their mission is not to meet the market. And that's the problem. See, we as economists, we say, shouldn't the market determine how much the women get paid? No, that's not what happened here. There's another interesting point here about the contract. Now listen to this part, again, from Rachel Bachman's article. The judge in this case, who ruled against the women, the judge simply concluded the women actually were paid more than the men from 2015 to 2019, about $221,000 collectively per game for women, compared to $213,000 for the men. And in the article, some of these facts go back and forth. One of them says that With their World Cup run and 5-game victory tour, the women are projected by U.S. Soccer to generate $25 million in 2020, compared with $15 million for men. Did you get that data? Then why do they want equal pay? They should want more pay. Now, if the market determines this, they should want more pay. But here's the thing about the contract, back to the article. The judge emphasized the women had agreed to a deal with more security and benefits rather than gamble on the higher upside of the men's pay per game deal. A central point in his finding that the women hadn't proved their pay discrimination point. They made a deal. Look, in finance we call this risk and return. The men took more risk for a higher return. The women took less risk for a lower return. And now at the end they're saying, we're being discriminated against. Why? Because you were free to agree to the contract? You shouldn't agree to the contract. But we really like the market. Listen, creational intent. God made women different than men. Here's how this should be resolved. They should start a league of their own. When I worked for the Association of Tennis Professionals, the executive director was a guy named Bob Briner. You may recognize him as the author of some Christian books, the most popular being Roaring Lambs. He wrote that after all of us got out of pro sports together, right? But Bob Briner is the one who started pro tennis. See, the exact same situation was happening to men's tennis players worldwide as is happening to the women's soccer players today. They were underpaid in the amateur game. So Bob Briner flew to Australia, signed up Ken Rosewall, Rod Laver, John Newcomb, etc., on and on and on, signed up all the Australians to move them from amateur to professional to start what is now professional tennis. This is a guy I worked with. He started it. He's the one who went and signed them up. There needs to be another Bob Briner today going around to these women and saying, let's leave the amateur game. Let's start a professional women's soccer league because you're being underpaid, right? You're not meeting the market where everyone votes. And we think that's the best way to solve these problems. Yeah. The market. Economists love the market. Yep. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist, where our slogan is, fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time.